Hello, again, this is Jeremy with Chess Cruncher. This is from one of my games in the U.S. Open Chess Champion, Vancouver, Washington. I'm playing as black, and my opponent is playing as white. His name is Landers. He's playing as white, and I'm playing as black. Okay, let us continue. Let's continue the game. Okay, d4, d5. Knight C, a 3. And then I play F6. He plays Bishop G5. I play Bishop. No, I'm sorry. I play E6, getting my dark squared bishop out so that I can castle. He attacks the center right away. I go pawn takes, and then he plays knight takes. Then I can bring my bishop out to intercept see, he was attacking it twice, and if I hadn't done that, I would have lost a piece, or I would have had to double my pawns. This way, I don't have to double my pawns. So it keeps a good pawn structure on the king side so that I can castle either king side or queen side later on. Okay, he plays knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, and bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop, and then he plays knight to c3. He's protecting the d4 pawn because I can bring my knight out to c6 and attack the d4 pawn. I prepare to fee and shuttle my light squared bishop along the diagonal, the strong diagonal, the A to H diagonal for white. He brings his bishop out, getting ready to castle. I bring my bishop out. I'm attacking his knight now, double attack. If you see the bishop and the queen, he'd have to double his pawns if he doesn't do anything. And he doesn't do anything, so why I take the initiative to double his pawns. Why not? We're coming to an end game where his doubled f pawns are going to be a big problem for him. I play knight to d7. I'm getting ready to bring my knight maybe to f6 and maybe h5 and then into f4, attacking the bishop and putting it on the square that it cannot be knocked out, because if you notice, he doesn't have a G pawn. Remember how I said that the two double pawns on the f file would be a weakness? The f4 square is a big weakness for him that I can put my knight on, maybe. He castles queenside. I push a5. He goes a4. I castle queenside. He goes f4. I go f5. I'm locking down the position. I'm not going to let him push any further up. I'm not going to have him trade any of his f-pawns because he has a weakness right now. And I can attack anytime I want. He goes h4. I go knight to f6. Remember what I said? Now by him moving the f3 pawn, he left open two squares that I can jump into, e4 and g4. Now he tries to seal up that with another pawn move, f3. He's wasting time with pawn moves, and I take advantage of that. I go knight to d5, attacking his f4 pawn. He attacks my pawn, my pawn e6 pawn. I take, and I'm actually protecting. He's double attacking. Now I'm a pawn ahead, and he's a pawn down. And I bring my rook up to d6, protecting the e6 pawn, and I'm getting ready to bring my other rook on h8 to e8 to protect the e6 pawn also. He moves his rook up. He's getting ready to double his rooks. I double mine. He doubles his. Now I'm pushing my pawn. I want to get my king into the battle, and I can also later on, if I want to, kick out his bishop by going b5. So, but that's further in the game. But it could happen. We'll see. He goes e2. No, I'm sorry. King to d2. I'm sorry. Then I'm just going back. I'm going to e5, e7, and now I'm getting ready. He brings his king back to c1. I bring my king in, protection. Now one of my rooks could be free to do anything it wants to. And there's a lot of threats of forks all over the place. I can even bring my knight to e5, but that he would take with the bishop. But that would still give me a strong center. And there's a lot of other maneuvers I could do with my knight. My knight's in a very powerful position on f4. He moves his king again to d2, because that's basically the only move he can do without weakening his structure, because if he moves his h pawn, I could take it with my knight, and then I'll be up 2 pawns. So I fortify my position. I lock down. I don't do any weaknesses. I make sure my line's strong, and so that he can't push his h pawn. He moves his king down. I see that there's a way I can actually move my king to. I see that f6 is a very weak square for his rook, because then I can push my, if you notice, the c pawn to c5 and attack the pawn that's protecting the rook. And so I'll show you how I slowly move my king over to f4. I move down. He moves over. I move my king. See, king, move, king, and then I check, getting ready to place my knight at h5 if I need to. And I also in my plan of king to f6. He moves, and then I go bang. Now it's time I can move my c pawn and attack his d pawn, and I can also win it with my rook too, because there's nothing protecting it. He moves that, and bang. See, I told you that I get ready for that. There it is, check, bam. Moves back. There's my plan. There it is. There it is. He moves up there, protect. I move my knight back. I'm getting ready to double up my rooks, and I can bring my knight in anytime I want. Here he goes, bang. I take, and now I have a very superior position. If you notice, a rook, I could bring my knight in anywhere. His pawn structure is destroyed. I have 2 extra pawns to his. He has 4. I have 6. It's just over. He goes king to g3. I push, because I know I will eventually make a pass pawn. If you notice, 2 versus 1. Then he tries to get some checks in. I go, don't think so, buddy, and I move back to d6, sealing up any wounds that he thinks he can get in there. He goes back to c6, c7, rook c7. And the reason he did that is he sees that at f7 he could checkmate me because his bishop supports the rook. I of course see that. I start out with a check, moving his king out. He moves back, bang, I move a pawn. My pawn, that was very important. It gave me a flight square to e5, and I can either trade my pawn for pawn and then have a pass pawn. But this is what he does, and it basically seals the fate. At this point, he is really, really stressed. He is shaking his head throughout the whole game, because all all the moves that I've been doing were very powerful moves. It was a very intense game. It was like it took like an hour to play, back and forth, thinking. But I suppose you would like to see the rest of the game. I'm gonna do it right now. Pawn takes. That was a blunder, a big time blunder. Because I'm gonna step back for a second, and you, my chess fans, and I would like you to see the winning move that made my opponent resign. I will step back now for 5 seconds. Correct, you are so smart. You guys know what you're doing. Rook to d3, check, forking the bishop and the king. And with that, my opponent resigns. We shook hands, and we marked it as a win for me. And so this is Jeremy versus Lance. See you later, and God bless.